The recruitment broker didn't even look up from his datapad when Sina walked into his booth. She supposed she couldn't blame him. In the lower district of Merrick 9, desperation wore 1,000 faces, and hers was just another in the crowd. "Skills?" he asked, voice flat with boredom. Senna held up the stumps where her hands used to be, wrapped in clean but worn bandages. "I can manage inventory systems verbally. I'm good with logistics, planning, organization. I can supervise teams, run quality control checks, operate voice command interfaces." The broker's eyes flicked up, scanned her arms, then returned to his screen. "No manual labor capability?" "Not currently." "Then I can't place you." He waved toward the exit with one hand, already pulling up the next applicant's file. Sina stood there for a moment longer, feeling the weight of the past 6 months pressing down on her shoulders. 6 months since the cabin at Shaft 19.
Yes.
6 months since she'd shoved those children toward the emergency lift and stayed behind to manually override the collapsing support beam. 6 months since the rock crusher had taken everything from her wrists down. The company had paid for basic medical care, enough to keep her alive and seal the wounds. Then they'd stamped her file with catastrophic loss of function and terminated her contract. No citizenship benefits without active employment. No prosthetics without citizenship benefits. No employment without hands. The mathematics of ruin were brutally simple. She walked out of the broker's office and into the main concourse of the lower district. The air tasted like recycled metal and old sweat. Overhead, the dome's inner surface showed cracks webbing across the reinforced glass, each fracture line patched with emergency sealant that had turned yellow with age. Merrick 9 had been a thriving mining colony once. Now it was just a way station for people who couldn't afford to leave and had nowhere better to die. Senna made her way through the crowds, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to navigate the world without the ability to catch herself if she fell. She'd gotten good at it. She'd gotten good at a lot of things that didn't matter to anyone hiring. The market district sprawled across 3 connected domes, each one smaller and more decrepit than the last. Vendors hawked salvaged equipment, expired rations, and black market pharmaceuticals. Street musicians played discordant melodies on instruments held together with wire and hope. Children darted between stalls, quick fingers liberating whatever wasn't nailed down. Senna found her usual spot near the transit hub, where foot traffic was heaviest. She'd sewn a vest from an old emergency blanket, the reflective material catching the light. Across the front, she'd had someone write in permanent marker, "Former engineer. Can read schematics, run diagnostics, program systems, manage operations. Need prosthetic hands? Will work for parts. Will work for installation. Will work for anything." She settled down with her back against a support pillar and waited. People passed. Some read her sign and hurried on, uncomfortable with visible need. Others sneered. A few tossed credit chits, which clattered to the ground around her, useless since she couldn't pick them up anyway. She'd learned to thank them politely and hope someone honest would collect the chits, transfer the credits to her account. Sometimes they did. Hours bled together. The dome lights cycled through their programmed day, shifting from harsh white to amber to the deep blue of artificial evening. Sina's legs cramped. Her shoulders ached from holding herself upright. But she kept her spine straight and her chin level, because some stubborn part of her refused to collapse entirely. "You're sitting wrong." The voice came from somewhere above her. Sina looked up to find a man standing a few feet away, hands in the pockets of a worn canvas jacket. He was tall, but not intimidating, with dark hair pulled back in a short tail and eyes that looked gray in the dome's shifting light. His face carried the kind of weathering that came from years in low-quality atmosphere. Skin slightly toughened, a small scar cutting through his left eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Senna said. "Your posture?" He gestured with his chin. "You're compensating for missing weight at the front, leaning back too far. You'll damage your spine that way." Senna bristled. "I'm aware of my own body mechanics, thank you." Clearly not aware enough. Crouched down, bringing himself to eye level. "You're also favoring your right side. Old injury to the left ribs. What do you want?" Senna kept her voice level, but her heart rate picked up. She'd learned wariness the hard way in the lower districts. "I'm wondering why you're out here instead of at the medical center." The medical center doesn't provide prosthetics to non-citizens. And the citizenship board won't process you without employment capability. He nodded, understanding flashing across his features. The loop, Senna confirmed bitterly. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to her bandaged arms to the sign across her chest. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to find it, because he stood and pulled a small card from his jacket pocket. He placed it on the ground beside her, close enough that she could read it without having to pick it up. Yarek Thorne, Prosthetics Fabrication. Lower Industrial Sector, Unit 47. Come by tomorrow morning if you want. Sina stared at the card, then up at him. I can't pay. I didn't ask you to. Everyone wants something. Tomorrow morning, he repeated. Or don't. Your choice. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into the crowd with the easy stride of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Sina looked down at the card again, reading the address printed in simple block letters. It was probably a trap or a con. Or worse. But that night, as she lay in the communal shelter listening to dozens of other people breathing in the darkness, Senna couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her. Not with pity, not with disgust, just with a kind of clinical assessment. Like she was a problem he was already halfway to solving. She'd learned not to trust easy solutions. The universe didn't hand out miracles to broken engineers in the slums of dying colonies. But she'd also learned that sometimes the only way forward was to take a risk on something that seemed too good to be true, because the alternative was staying exactly where she was. And that was just another way of dying. When morning came, she asked one of the shelter volunteers to help her navigate to the lower industrial sector. The woman raised an eyebrow at the address, but didn't ask questions. People minded their own business down here. It was healthier that way. Unit 47 sat at the end of a narrow corridor that smelled like ozone and hot metal. The door was unmarked except for a small etched number. Sina stood in front of it for a full minute, her pulse hammering in her throat. Before she finally knocked with her elbow, the door opened. Yark looked exactly the same as he had the previous evening, though now he wore a leather apron over. His clothes, the front stained with various chemical residues. You came, he said. I'm an idiot, Senna replied. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, brief but genuine. Or you're desperate enough to hope. Come in. He stepped aside, and after another moment of hesitation, Senna walked through the door into whatever came next. The workshop was nothing like Senna expected. She'd imagined something cold and clinical. All sterile surfaces and medical equipment. Instead, she found herself in a space that felt lived in, almost comfortable despite its industrial purpose. Workbenches lined 3 walls, covered with tools, components, and half-assembled devices she couldn't immediately identify. Soft amber lighting cast everything in warm tones. A small living area occupied one corner, separated by a curtain made from welding blankets. The air smelled like machine oil and something else. Something sharp and chemical that made her nose itch. Adhesive catalyst, Yarek said, noticing her reaction. I work with synthetic nerve interfaces. The bonding agent has a smell. He moved to one of the workbenches and began clearing space. Sit here. I need to examine the damage. Ina remained standing. You still haven't told me what you want in exchange. Haven't decided yet. He glanced at her, expression unreadable. Does that bother you? Yes. Good. It should. He pulled a stool out from under the bench. But I'm still going to look at your arms, and I'm going to build you new hands, and we'll figure out the rest later. Now sit. There was no threat in his voice, but there was certainty. The kind of certainty that came from someone who'd made a decision and wouldn't be argued out of it. Sina recognized that tone. She'd used it herself. Back when she was running crews in the deep mines, she sat. Yarek washed his hands in a small sink, dried them thoroughly, then pulled on a pair of thin examination gloves. He moved around to face her, his movements economical and practiced. I'm going to remove the bandages now. Tell me if anything hurts. Sina nodded, her jaw tight. She'd had people look at her stumps before. Medical technicians during her recovery, the citizenship board examiner who'd stamped her file rejected. Each time had felt like an inventory of loss, clinical assessment of everything she'd never be again. But Yarek's touch was different. His fingers worked the bandages loose with careful precision, unwrapping layers of material that Senna changed every 3 days at the public wash stations. When the last layer fell away, revealing the scarred tissue and bone-deep endings of her forearms, he didn't recoil, didn't pause, just leaned closer, examining the damage with the focused attention of someone reading a complex schematic. Clean amputation, he murmured. Trauma shears? Rock crusher. But the emergency medical team had to finish the cut. The bones were too fractured to save more length. They did good work. The nerve endings are properly capped. No sign of neuromas or phantom signals bleeding through. His thumb traced the air just above her right arm, not quite touching. How's your sensory recall? What do you mean? Can you still feel your hands? In your mind? Sina's throat tightened. Every day, every minute, I reach for things that aren't there. I dream about having fingers and wake up remembering all over again. Good. Yarek straightened up, pulling off the gloves. That means your motor cortex is still active. The neural pathways haven't atrophied. I can work with that. He moved to a storage cabinet and began pulling out components, laying them on the bench in careful rows. Circuit boards, servo motors, delicate sensor arrays that gleamed like spider silk, artificial tendons wound on small spools. Senna watched, transfixed, as he assembled what looked like the skeletal framework of a human hand. This is going to take time, he said without looking up. 3 weeks, maybe 4. I'll need to do multiple fittings, adjust the interface protocols, calibrate the sensory feedback. You'll need to stay here during the build process. Sina's stomach dropped. I can't pay for lodging. I have space. The cot in the corner. It's clean. Finally looked at her. I'm not asking you to share my bed, if that's what you're worried about. I sleep in the back room. You'll have privacy. Why are you doing this? Yarek was quiet for a long moment, his hands stilling over the components. When he spoke, his voice carried something darker, something weighted with old pain. 4 years ago, I worked at a corporate medical facility on Titan Station. High-end prosthetics for executives and military officers. We turned away more people than we helped because they couldn't afford the fees. He picked up one of the servo motors, turning it over in his fingers. There was a woman. Transport pilot. Lost both legs in a docking accident. She came to us 3 times, begging for help. We sent her away all 3 times. What happened to her? She threw herself out an airlock. His jaw tightened. Left a message saying she was tired of being half a person in a world that only valued whole ones. A silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of things that couldn't be undone. I quit the next day, Yada continued. Came here because Merrick 9 is full of people the system has chewed up and spit out. Figured I could at least fix a few of them before this whole place collapses. Senna felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the armor she'd built around herself. You can't save everyone, no, but I can save you. He met her eyes, and she saw no pity there. Just determination, if you'll let me. She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him that she didn't need saving, that she'd survived 6 months on her own and could survive 6 more. But the words stuck in her throat because they both knew it was a lie. She was drowning slowly, and he was offering her a lifeline. "Kay," she whispered. Over the following days, they fell into a rhythm. Yarek worked during the daylight hours, and Senna watched, learning the language of his craft. He explained each step as he went, his voice falling into a teaching cadence that suggested he'd done this before. The key is the neural interface, he said one morning, holding up a thin mesh of conductive fibers. This bonds directly to the nerve endings in your arm. It reads the electrical signals your brain sends and translates them into motor commands. But it's bidirectional. It also sends sensory data back so you can feel textures, temperature, pressure. How is that possible? Sina leaned closer, fascinated despite herself. Synthetic nerve tissue, grown in culture medium and programmed to interface with human neurons. It's expensive technology, probably illegal to possess outside licensed facilities. He smiled slightly. But I've always been better at asking forgiveness than permission. In the evenings, they ate together. Simple meals that Yarek prepared with the same focused attention he brought to his work. Sina couldn't help with the cooking, but she could talk, and slowly. Conversation became easier. She told him about the mines, about the deep shafts where she'd spent years drilling through rock, managing teams of 20 people at a time, about the satisfaction of solving engineering problems, of finding elegant solutions to complex challenges. "I was good at it," she said one night, her voice quiet. "I was really good, and then in 1 minute, it was all gone. It's not gone." Yarek set down his fork. "The knowledge is still in your head. The skill is still there. You just need different tools to express it." "That's easy for you to say. You still have your hands, I do." He held them up, studying them in the light. "But I lost something else. I lost my faith that the systems we build are designed to help people. I lost my belief that hard work and good intentions matter in a universe that runs on profit margins." Da-da-da-da-da-da. He lowered his hands. "We all lose something. The question is what we build from what's left." Sina thought about that long after the lights dimmed and she lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. Through the curtain, she could hear Yarek moving in the back room, soft sounds of him preparing for sleep. She'd spent 6 months thinking of herself as broken, as less than whole, as someone defined entirely by what she'd lost. But Yarek looked at her and saw something different. He saw problems to solve, systems to rebuild, potential waiting to be unlocked. And slowly, painfully, she was starting to see it too. On the 10th day, he called her over to the workbench. "I want to try the first fitting." Sina's heart jumped into her throat. She'd watched him build the hands piece by piece. But seeing them lying there on the bench, complete and waiting, made everything suddenly real. They were beautiful. Not in the way natural hands were beautiful, but in the way a perfectly engineered machine was beautiful. All clean lines and elegant function. The fingers were articulated with micro joints, the palms housing the main processor cores. The synthetic skin covering them was slightly paler than her natural tone, but Yarek had promised to adjust the pigmentation later. "Right arm first," he said. "This is going to feel strange. Don't panic." He lifted the prosthetic and aligned it with her stump. The neural interface mesh felt cold against her skin for just a moment, and then sensation flooded through her. Not pain, but presence. The ghost of fingers she hadn't felt in months suddenly snapping into crystal clarity. Senna gasped, her vision blurring with sudden tears. "Breathe," Yarek said softly. "Let your brain adjust. The sensory input is overwhelming at first." Sina breathed. Slowly, the chaos resolved into something manageable. She could feel the prosthetic now, really feel it, as if it had always been part of her body. "Try to move your thumb," she thought about it, sending the signal down neural pathways that had been screaming into void for half a year. The thumb twitched, then moved, then curved inward with perfect, responsive grace. A sob broke from her throat before she could stop it. Yarek's hand landed on her shoulder, steady and warm. "You're okay. You're doing great." She wasn't okay. She was breaking apart and coming back together all at once. 6 months of grief and loss, and desperate hope pouring out of her in shaking gasps. But his hand stayed on her shoulder, grounding her, reminding her that she wasn't alone in this moment. When she finally got control of herself, wiping her face with her left stump in a gesture that was almost funny, she looked up at him. "Thank you," she whispered. "We're not done yet." But his eyes were gentle. "Left arm tomorrow. Then we start on fine motor control training." That night, Sina lay awake with her new right hand resting on her chest, feeling the subtle hum of its processors, the whisper of artificial muscles responding to her thoughts. She flexed her fingers in the darkness, over and over, relearning the simple miracle of having a hand at all, and somewhere in the back room. Garrick lay awake too, listening to the soft sounds of her breathing, wondering when exactly this had stopped being just another job and started being something that mattered far more than he'd intended.